Hello, Nick. It's an absolute privilege to be able to speak to you. So, you are primarily known by most people as an actor, but you're also a writer, you're a director, you're also producing. So, growing up, were any of these on your what I want to do, what I want to be when I grow up list?
Yeah. I mean, mostly what I wanted to be when I grew up was a pop star, and but at the time that was they oh God, they had it made, didn't they? They were, that was when people were buying records and it was important, and my biggest thing was that. And I was in and out, I started a band, Effigy. You can tell, this sort of new wave goth sort of, dark sort of goth rock group, Effigy. And we were great. We were actually not bad. I've got some demos somewhere, and that wasn't quite taking off as quickly as I'd like, and I ended up going to drama school as a sort of backup, which is a terrible thing to say because most people spend years auditioning, and there's this ridiculous sort of, you're so lucky to get a place in drama school. I just got booted out of sixth form college because I was trying to be this sort of rebel musician, and then one of the teachers at sixth form college said, "You're going to be chucked out. Everything, your grades are terrible." But I was doing a drama A level, which I was head and shoulders ahead of everyone else on. I mean, I could do that. And she said, why don't you apply to drama school?" Which is something that didn't exist, on my radar, on my
Yeah.
accounts for state, in my family background. No one had ever been to drama school. I didn't know that there was such a place. It was like Brigadoon or something. It's just this mythical place that doesn't really happen. And now sent off. She helped me send off for some perspectives. So, and I got a couple back, and the only place that was still auditioning that late in the year, because she told me I was going to be kicked out at the end of term, was Mount View, and I went along and auditioned and got in on sort of on the spot, which was, I didn't know how lucky I was. There were people in that audition. There was about, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 people auditioning that day, but that goes on every Thursday for a whole year, and there's a dozen drama schools that they're all auditioning for. And I was very, very lucky. I'd lied about my age. It's just in the old days when you had a birth certificate that was paper. I said Tipexed it out the year so that, and then filled the forms in. So I was over 18, so I was eligible for a grant and all my fees to be paid. So the council paid my fees and a tiny bit of subsistence, and there I was, like, at this drama school, like this place that I didn't have the first clue what I was doing. This is a little anecdote, but they give you a piece of paper, give you a little booklet when you get in saying, please turn up with a copy of Shakespeare, a full fencing kit, tapped shoes, a leotard, and a cape. Okay,
All
right.
household
What?
goods.
All right, so I did, yeah, exactly. So I went to the dance shop on the estate and said, right, I need tap shoes, a leotard, some sort of cape, and then just and she, oh yeah, of course, Daddy, I'll do this. What size? Size eight. Okay, size eight. Yeah. Gave me all this gear, and of course it was ladies, girls' tap shoes, a proper leotard, like like a girl's leotard.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was parading around drama school looking like Frankenfurter, like in these like women's tap shoes with like leggings and a leotard, and my dyed black crimped goth hairdo, like literally looking like some sort of pansexual rock god. And it was everyone else was like, who's this kid? Where did we find? I just no idea. It took me. And suddenly there's all these sort of musical theatre people with, clip-on braces bursting into song. I mean, what? I won't swear, but it's like, what? Where am I? What planet have I landed on?
Yeah.
And it took me a while to adjust, but that was because I hadn't, the band I was in hadn't, he hadn't quite cracked it. So my throughout drama school, it was all, "Oh, I'm just doing this one until I get my band back together," and I had this sort of consolation prize of starring in films as opposed to, but it actually held me in really good stead. So the first job I did, I went through drama school. I had a mischievous time, and it was fun. And a lot of the people I was working with, have gone on to do great things. But at the very end of the year, that some crazy German director was looking for people that could play music, play guitars to be in his film, which was about a Liverpool band on the Reeperbahn that weren't the Beatles. Because there were a load. There was about 100 different bands, some of them famous, like the Animals or Jerry and the Pacemakers, and what have you. And then a lot of film bands that just disappeared. But there was loads of Liverpool bands that were going to Hamburg, teenage kids that were playing in nightclubs. And it was a movie called Hard Days, Hard Nights, directed by Horst Koenigstein, and he had an audition at the hotel in London, and I rocked in as someone who could actually do it, all of that. And he's like, "Ben, you're going to be in my movie," yes. So I got a part in the film before I left drama school, which made me incredibly unpopular. It's like, I was like the worst. The thing you could do for your social life is have a job before you leave. Everybody hated me, but that held me in good stead. And then a little bit later on, when I did another well, I wouldn't say terrible, because it's no films are terrible. It's just people doing their best. But I did quite a poor film called Buddy Song with Chesney Hawkes and Roger Daltrey. But same thing, because I went into the audition, and there's people that everyone on their CV says, yes, I can play the guitar and ride a horse. It's one of those things. But because I actually can, it was like, no, what do you mean like this, Roger? And they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, you've got that job. So there's at least 2 jobs where my pining to be a pop star actually paid off and helped me in the career that I ended up with.
So in those formative years, when you're in school, or maybe before, can you remember the very first film that you saw on the big screen in the cinema?
Yeah. We asked this question. There's a couple of little things I went to see as a toddler, like cartoons and stuff, and Saturday morning pictures and what have you. But I think the big event was my dad's a film buff, and he he did this thing where he came to pick me and my brother up from school, saying that we had to go to the dentist's. And this was, this little Catholic school on our estate. We got in the car. He drove all the way to Leicester Square, parked the car in Leicester Square, and took us to see Star Wars, because he really wanted to see it. But this was at the Empire Leicester Square, and it was like, like 1 o'clock screening, or whatever, first screening of the day. So it was almost empty.
And when you could park in Leicester Square as well.
Yeah, when you could park in Leicester Square, that's right. Well, so we're in the Empire Leicester Square, or the Odeon Leicester, but I think the Empire, with the biggest screen in probably in the country. And that opening shot where when the spaceship goes on and on and on and on and on and on, we're seeing that on a 50-foot screen, in proper 70 mil or whatever it was, in the best cinema in the country. It was amazing. So we watched that, like the whole thing, it was incredible. And then we came out, and the first McDonald's had opened on Leicester Square. One of the first McDonald's had opened on Leicester Square. And then we went across the street and had, all the McDonald's stuff, the milkshakes that you couldn't get out of the straw, and burn yourself to death apple pies and all that. And then went to see my nan and granddad and went home. And the next day we went back to school, and I'm telling everyone, I was about, I'm trying to work out, I was probably about 10. I was in like fifth year or fourth year at infant school, junior school, and I told everyone, yeah, they got this robot that does this giant bit, and then there's this bit, so telling all these other kids what Star Wars is like, because none of them had seen it. And then my younger brother, who's like 4 years younger than me, so he would have been about 6. He told everyone he'd been to see Star Wars, and he got beaten up for lying, because he'd been to the dentist and he was making stuff up. You know what I mean? I didn't go. So so that's sort of something. I think that started a wedge between us. That I did go to Star Wars. You might, I should have helped him out maybe, but that was a big experience. I think that really sort of takes you into it. And then the first film I went to see, I'm trying to work out, it was like about a year later, we did a scam, and me and my mate David Macaulay told his mum that we were going to the pictures with my mum, and I told my mum that we were going to the pictures with his mum, and me and David Macaulay went down Watford High Street and saw Grease on our own when we were about 11, and like sat there watching Grease, and it was like, we're going to pictures on our own. Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
came out of there, like bought a tub of Brill cream and did a knee slide through boots. It was like born to be me hand job, baby. It was like absolutely singing the songs and being a rocker, being Danny Rizzo, Danny Zuko up and down Watford High Street with a dripping in Brill cream and with a sort of flared 70s PVC leather jacket, trying to be one of the T-Birds. It was yeah, that was the first time I went on my own. I
Do you,
went, went without unaccompanied with an adult.
do you think it was Star Wars and like your dad's love of films that kind of had prompted your interest in drama and becoming an actor?
No, no, no. It was much more intrinsic than that. My dad worked for the AA, so he worked nights a lot. So, and this was actually, the radio room, running the radio room, the command and control. So, he'd be doing night shifts in Leicester Square, which is where they initially were, and then Stanmore, where they moved to. But it meant that my mum was on her own. So I'd sit up with my mum. We'd have like a packet of JPS watching the late night films. So I'd be there till the telly finished, watching like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or whatever fantastic black and white 60s movie was on, and she'd just sit there like, oh, yeah, no, I like that Clint Eastwood. He looks a bit like your dad. And I'd just be sat there as from the age of 8 till whatever, till with my mum, and then be late for school. And that was it. Yeah, I'll tell him you weren't well. It'll be all right, don't worry about it. So I'm watching these movies, and it got really serious because BBC Two, late at night, is the last channel on, and they're always showing something really edgy. They'd be showing Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, or Kind of Loving, or something that's a little bit risque. And I was sat there, till midnight as a 10-year-old or under 10-year-old watching these films and taking them all in. And it wasn't until many, many years later. I mean, when I was at sixth form college, there are other people were doing a film studies course, which I didn't do because I didn't know. Again, I didn't know you could do that. But everything on their syllabus I'd seen. There were some people doing. I was doing the drama course because I'd been the lead in all the school plays, so I thought I'll keep this as something I'll carry on. The film course, I thought, well, I don't know, that might be complicated. That must have stuff. And there were people doing the drama course and the film course, and I'd seen every single movie that was on their syllabus, and I knew all the directors. I knew you start seeing the similarities. I mean, my favourite actors as a child were. My favourite actor as a child was probably John Hurt, with Jack Wilde, because he's the Artful Dodger and that. But then John Hurt and Alan Bates and Albert Finney, they're my favourite actors. And you sort of, it becomes really strange that when you're studying this stuff, and it's just intrinsic, the Taste the Honey or whatever, you know all these things, Sheila Delaney is. You don't need to have that explained to you. I saw that when I was 9. I know what it's like. Yeah, her mum's a prostitute. Yeah, it's like it's like and that's where it all came from. So it was like that. Just that sat in front of the sort of goggle box, but I'm thought because it's late at night and your dad's working nights, watching all this late night telly with your mum, and it's art house stuff because that's all that's on late at night on BBC Two. The last channel before you get the national anthem and the little red dot or little white dot.
So when you'd trained as an actor, you kind of did, literally all the stuff that every, new actor does, Heartbeat, Casualty, Grange Hill. I think you even did the infamous El Dorado at one point.
Oh, that was great.
Which is, less said about that, the better, I think.
I loved it.
Your first film, as you said, was Hard Days, Hard Nights, which was around about 1990. Your first kind of proper film. Can you remember your first day on set with that? And
I remember everything about it because that's another thing that changes your life. Because most people, they leave drama school and then they start, they get a little part, they do some fringe work, or they do a play above a pub, and then if they're lucky they might end up doing some like one line on a film, and then eventually they'll be in, they'll do a commercial, and they'll do some decent paid theatre, and then eventually they might end up on a film set. But for me, it was like I was 20 years old, and then you're on the set of this movie, and it wasn't just that. We went to Hamburg and recorded the soundtrack album at the BMG Studios, the studio that is like James Last's studio, but that's a big deal in Germany. That's like, well,
Yeah.
you're the studio, this is James Last. All right.
Showing our age now.
Exactly. It's that joke. What's the difference between a James Last orchestra and a goat? A goat has the arsehole at the back and the horns at the front.
Apologies to James Last.
Yes, and goats. Yeah, you maybe got that. But yeah, that was one of the jokes I learned when I was there. But so we did this album. So I'm doing living the dream. I'm recording an album. It's me playing the guitar and singing songs and writing little guitar licks, and they're being recorded. And then went home for a week hiatus, then flew out and did rehearsals in the studio was in Berlin when the wall was up, you know. So
Yeah.
we're at the I think it was NDR German film studios, and when you first time you walk on set, having done all the rehearsals and little improv things and all the stuff the director wanted to do, I'm like, oh my God, this is real. This is a nightclub. There's a bar and it's a real bar and everything's real. You know, it's a set. It's a really good film set. Like this is like an altered state. This is a strange sort of reality. This is real. And then we did the scenes and do the filming and this, that, and the other. And I'm up there playing, and you have to sort of mime to a playback for editor's sake, so that you're doing the same timing. But it's the playback of my own stuff, you know, or our own stuff. But and the mics will be live, you know, that helps. And we're doing this gig in this club, and it's completely real. It's completely real until they say cut, and you're in this very strange fantasy world where it is the ultimate of I suppose when you have these sort of, you know, what's going on at the moment with these virtual reality sort of obsession, it's like that, you know, because it is real, everything is real, and there's the safety net of knowing someone can shout cut, or the guns aren't real, or that guy isn't really going to try and kill you, or whatever it is, you know. It's that reality, and it makes it sort of affected me in a very, and I'm sure everybody that's been there, in a very strange way, where I came back having done this movie, thinking, well, that's what I want to do. That's incredible. I have to get back into that. You know, I have to put that virtual reality thing back on. I have to get. I don't do any gaming. I don't really see the appeal. But it's because that's what happened when I was 20 years old on a set where everything was a reality. You know, and I was working with some amazing people. Ulrich Muir, who ended up in, you know, everyone knew him from The Lives of Others. He was in the movie. Got an incredible actor, and they released him from East Germany to do this film. And then we did this thing where we had to pretend he was in scenes that he wasn't, so we could go and see family and then come back because he was under some sort of Stasi guard. And Helmut Grimm, who is everyone knows as Maximilian from Cabaret. He was the owner of the nightclub, and, you know, doing all this weird over the top acting and telling these stories about working with Richard Burton or Lee Marvin or what have you. So I had these fantastic first-hand anecdotes from this incredible, you know, this incredible German movie star. And Rita Tushingham was in it, who I knew from all of these 60s films that I'd seen, you know. So wow, she's from Dr. Zhivago and Taste of Honey, and, you know, and The Leather Boys and all these other incredible films that I've been watching, you know. So it was a sort of, it's a formative thing, you know. I came back from that, and that was it. I had to do that. It doesn't matter how many roads I have to sweep, how many dreadful jobs I have to do. I can't not do this. I have to do this now. That's the end of it. That's it. I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I'm totally convinced.
So you've got you've got a huge back catalogue of films. There's over 100 credits that you've got, but it's
I'm like
1990.
Eric Roberts, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Between
yeah.
me and Eric Roberts, who's done the most films. I mean, it's, you know, anything to keep the lights on. Some of them are great, and some of them are like, yeah, that's a keep the lights on gig. You know, that's doing someone a favour, but,
Well,
you know.
1998 was when everything changed for you, really,
Yeah,
career-wise,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. My understanding is that that role almost never happened for you.
Well, what it was they were like, it was sort of anyone but him. Um, uh, there was initially Ridley Scott was the exec producer on it, so it's a Ridley Scott movie, and it was because Matt Vaughan knew Ridley and he wanted him attached to the film, and it was going to be quite a big budget movie. It was going to be shot in the Ealing Studios, and my agent told me blatantly, there is no way that you're going to get an audition for this. They're not going to see you. They're not interested in you. You're the bloke. You're from El Dorado. You're not. Yeah, no. There's no way. Guy had a very particular remit that no one else has had sort of, before or since. But he doesn't cast actors. He doesn't like actors. He likes people. He likes interesting people. He just doesn't like them. It's sort of all a bit weird. That doesn't, they're not his bag. So initially, he saw a friend of mine who'd had a bit of a profile because he was in a TV show, and they had an article in Sky magazine or something. He said, "I want to see that guy." So he came in, and he said, "You should see my mate Nick, because I just signed with Select Model Agency, which was a scam. Basically, my ex-girlfriend got a 500 quid finder's fee if she brought someone." So she brought me in and then split up with me. So it was like, oh, okay. So, but I was technically on the books for Select for a little bit. And he said, "Oh, he signed with Select. He's got a good look you like." So I went in, my agent saying that apparently they are going to see you, but don't worry, there's no way you're going to get this job. You're just making up the numbers, blah, blah, blah. So I went in to see Guy and Matt at Ealing Studios, and Guy did this strange thing where we're reading this scene, and he started improvising. Guy's improvising. And I sort of stood my ground. I went, "Yeah, are you going to shut up and carry on with it, or what? Are you going to pay attention?" And I sort of went along with him, berated him in character, stuck with the script, explained to him what we were going to do, and how can you stop? I won't swear, but I said a few expletives in my little exchange with Guy. And Matt filmed it, and Matt went, "Oh, that was amazing. How do you do that? That was incredible." And Guy was like, "Yeah." Guy felt like, "Yeah, this is my script, my type of working is brilliant. I bring the best out in people." Walked me out to the car park and said, "Oh, what a great honor to meet you. What a great job. That's such a good reading. Really, really enthusiastic. That's brilliant. I feel, but it's all about names and faces in this game. So good luck, son." And that was it. And I was out the door, and they offered it to Ethan Hawke and Stephen Dorff and Christian Bale, and I mean literally everybody. Guy didn't like them, or they wouldn't do it for the money. Then the film collapsed, and that whole thing sort of moved down a gear. But I got the phone call from I remember getting the phone call from the agent saying, because I was in the mix, and I went to see him again, and then I was just sort of socially and pop in and see him for a drink and all this sort of stuff. And there was a bit of interest. And I was like looking after myself. It's very aesthetic with Guy. He just wanted someone who looked like a sort of hairdresser's model, but could act a bit. That's all he wanted.
Yeah.
Christian Bale too ugly. But that was it. Just simple as that. That's the way he was looking at it. And so that I was in with a sniff. And then I got the call saying, "Yeah, they're gonna give you the role." And as I said, at the time, it was a big movie. It was a big budget. There were all these people attached to it. And that was the most euphoric day of my life, I think, because I'd had 10 years of struggle, to get back to where I was in 1989 or 1989 when we filmed that movie in Germany. I was back on set of a proper film. I just burst into tears. And I remember I went to the Soho House and said, "Right, I know I'm not a member, but you've got to let me in now because I'm the lead in this. I'm the lead in the film." And they did. And I sat there and I got really drunk with some people I knew there, and then sat in the middle of Leicester Square, going back to the old Star Wars thing, sat in the middle of Leicester Square at 2 a.m. when they chucked me out of the Soho House, and just burst into tears with relief. I've got the lead in a film. It's happened at last. All of that humiliation and misery of the 90s, of doing things you don't want to do, and having other people lord it over you. It was or question your decisions. Your parents saying, "Well, shouldn't you try doing something else? This isn't working out." Everything was lifted from me. It was like, oh, I was right. I've been vindicated. This is going to work. Staggered home, very emotional, you know, like got on a night bus, sort of weeping, back to the disused pub that I was living in. And then it all began. And then what happened is the film got smaller and smaller and smaller, and the budget got smaller, and the fee got smaller. But I was still attached to it. You know, I was still, yeah, we've got this unknown kid, but he's really good, and he's going to be Eddie, he's going to be the lead. And they stuck with me as the film reduced, and then the film ended up being what it was, which was this fantastic, phenomenal success because it had a sort of free genre. There was no one telling anyone what to do. It didn't have names in it. It didn't have people that didn't have preconceived, this is how it's going to be. You know, it became its own, it developed its own identity because of the people that were in it. And that's because the people that were in it were and involved in it was sort of making it up to a certain extent. That's why it's such a warm film, and nobody could copy it. Everyone tried to do their version of it, but they didn't get it. You know, they didn't get it. It had to be, and I think if a big name actor had been attached to that role, the movie wouldn't have been the same. You know, it needed to be an ensemble of people you hadn't heard of, and then it becomes a British film. Then it becomes your film. Then it's our movie. You know, it's not owned by. It's not a Nick Moran film or a Jason Statham film or a Vinnie Jones film or a whatever. It's just Lock Stock. It's just this fantastic thing that everybody has got a bit of ownership over.
So, Nick, the other thing that I was going to ask you is I was watching the film recently, and it's a great film. It's still one of the great films that defined the Britpop era along with Trainspotting. But the thing that I noticed, and it's the end credits. Not sure if you've ever been asked this before. So you get your credit as playing Eddie and whatnot, but as the credits go on, there's a credit. Bear in mind this is a low budget film. Nick Moran's hair by L. Cossington Mahogany Designs. And
Yeah.
Dexter Fletcher has got a hair design credit as well. So surely that was somewhere they could save money.
Well, exactly. So one of the things the guy insisted on was that I get my effing haircut. He wanted me too pasty, bad hair, and underweight. So I was working out a lot. I was really, really fit when I was doing that, and the stuck on a sunbed, which is something I would never do. You know, as a sort of indie goth, heroin chic sort of fella, and then snapped me down to Mahogany's. I remember it. It was just by the bottom of just near George Square. It is, and went in with some. He had a load of model photos on a sort of look board, on a mood board, and that's the whole look came from. Which I'd never seen a director do that before, really. That worried about that sort of aesthetic. So we had these haircut looks, and then these fashion designs. So I got a suit off Oswald Boateng, which brilliant. And then Oswald, he dined out on that. You know, he's, oh yes, I did all the streets for Lock Stock, and he lent us one. But I ended up doing a catwalk show for him the following year, which is another story. And then Mahogany gave us a free haircut, providing that they get the credit. So it's just them saving a few quid, because it would have been like, £80 at the hairdressers, or 100 quid, or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
In a posh hairdressers, and they were just trying to save money. The makeup designer, what's her name? Is it Katie? She was brilliant, but she'd had a tiniest budget. So
Yeah.
if she could get a credit instead of a hair thing, it makes it sound really cool on Mr. Moran's suits by Oswald Boateng, Mr. Moran's hair by Mahogany, but it's actually their way of saving some dough. And that's that whole, a lot of stuff was product placement and sponsorship before anyone in British films was really doing that. And
Yeah.
they did it as out of necessity, but it was actually, it made it look really cool and really current. That's one of the things that film, why it was so cool, is that it had a look that was like bang, right, a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd walk past mannequins that had a sort of Nick Moran haircut and were wearing a suit that looked like stuff I was wearing in that film, and that was the whole thing. We were ahead of the curve because he'd gone through all these fashion magazines and put this sort of mood board, very particular about what he wanted and the look he wanted and this cut of suit and what people should be wearing. And it made it very, very current. The other thing, incidentally, before you ask the next question, I think one of the reasons that Lock Stock stands up so well, and you could watch it tomorrow and it's still, it hasn't aged, is because we were the first British film to use mobile phones. You see, so any other movie, you know, you're in a phone box or you're picking a phone up or, you know, dialing something. But everyone had mobile phones at a time when not everyone had mobile
Yeah.
phones. So we all had our cell phones, and they were cool. You know, they were really cool phones. It was, and the only other film I'd seen that had done that was The Matrix. You
Yeah.
know, so suddenly, you know, people have got a thing in their hand. You can phone someone and they'll pick it up wherever they are in space and time. You can contact them and tell them to do something or not do something, you know.
But it's
And
funny you should say
the
about
ending of the movie is a mobile phone game, you know,
But
which
it's funny
everybody
you should
still
say
gets.
about mobile phones because it ties into a question that someone has asked us to ask you about it, and it's like your opinion really. Um, the contention is that the ending, the very end kind of shot, which is Jason Fleming leaning over the bridge, and it's obviously a nod towards the Italian Job. But the contention is from this one of our readers is that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work because he's leaning over the bridge. He's got the rifles in one hand. He's got I think he's got a
Up in
phone,
his
he's
mouth.
gripping it in his mouth, and he's holding onto the bridge with his other hand. So the phone's ringing. So all he had to do was just put the rifles back on the ledge of the bridge, pull himself back up, take the call.
So yeah, but well, I would contest that the phone is ringing, the rifles are on the edge, and he needs to just push them 6 inches to fall into the Thames. And what he's thinking is he's been told get rid of those guns, so he wants to get rid of those guns. So when he answers the phone, he says, "Yeah, I've done it." So it's like
Right.
looking at the phone,
Okay.
doing, do I get rid of the guns and then I can answer the phone with impunity and say, yeah, I've dumped them, it's all fine, we're all safe. Or do I answer the phone and say, I haven't quite done it. What is it you want?
That
So
was
it is
kind of
that
my
that's
line of
that's the
thought with
idea.
it.
There's no, he's right, or they are right, that there's no peril in it. It's just a decision. Does he do this or does he do that? And the peril is something that people have just, that's conjecture. That's what people have put on it. But there's actually, he's got a phone in here. All he's got to do is, oh no, I haven't dumped him. It's fine. And then you've got to, but
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what he'd probably do is shove them off and then say, yes, it's fine, I've got rid of them. So the dilemma is, as it hasn't got any danger in it, but that's the dilemma. So yeah, they're not right. It's a bit
Fair
not
enough.
right.
I'm kind of with you on this one. So the film had made names of so many people from yourself, Jason Statham, Vinnie Jones, so many people. You've not worked with Guy since. I know you had a falling out with him, but
Yeah,
have
yeah.
you reconciled with him? Because
Well, he lives next door, so which is really strange. Literally, I moved into where I am, to this square, over 20 years ago, 2001, I think. And then about 5 years later, there was all this building work and hubbub and what have you. One of the big houses, about three doors down, and it was guys moved in and knocked these two houses together into one to have and built this massive subterranean, swimming pool and,
yeah,
pleasure dome. And there was building work going on for ages. And then I went to a stage that I'd seen when I was putting the bins out, and he's got a baby over his shoulder, and we sort of have a sort of a neighborly chat. So I bump into him quite a bit. Then he went and bought my local pub, which initially I thought, oh crap. But he's done a really good job, and it's a really
yeah,
great pub.
yeah.
It's actually, it's a nice place. And I mean, the rumor on the square is that he only bought the pub so he could have an extra parking space. He's had a couple of more parking spaces. But yeah, I do see him bouncing around. I don't know if we'll ever work together again. One of my regrets is that, I mean, we had our falling out, and I didn't handle it particularly well, but I just it just oh, that's the washing machine. Is that a distraction?
No, no, I can't hear it at this end.
Okay, cool. So we had our falling out. I could have handled it better. I always assumed that somewhere along the line we'd reconcile and work together again.
Yeah,
And it hasn't happened. And what I never got to do when I did Telstar, when I directed my first film, I always wanted to be on a podium so that I could thank Guy. because he's the guy that I learned so much as a director from. He made it because he is so practical minded, and it goes like this, and I'm not interested in that, and he's not interested in the fluff. You know, he's very, very direct, and it gets things done. And I watched that on set, and I shamelessly nicked his way of running a set because it's such a cool way of doing it. You know, you're in mild contention with everyone, so they know who the boss is, but you're always listening to what people have got to say. And it was such a good way to. It was so informative for me, and I never got a chance to thank him. I mean, it will happen. Hopefully, at some point, I'll get to say a big public thank you, Guy. But you know, not just for giving me the gig in his first film and all the stuff that led to, but actually educating me. The sort of erudition of watching him work is something that I carry on with. So I'd like to work with him again. And the other thing that drives me mad is Guy's got a particular way of dialogue. He's got a particular way of writing. There's a rhythm to it. It's it's very particular, and it's flat and deadpan and funny without being funny. The joke is you're not telling a joke. And I keep seeing people do it and cock it up, you know. And for me, it's like, I think he's blowing smoke up his backside. It's a bit like Pinter. You know, everything's in the subtext. The story is what's interesting. What's going on is what's interesting. The dialogue is just this funny thing that goes on above it.
Yeah.
And I think actors try to either over emote or over complicate Guy's dialogue, or they don't get the gag. And the gag is, this is chaos, but I'm saying something completely straight-laced and funny. I think they're all dead, so I think we might be all right. You know, that's the way, that's the joke, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody's dead. And so, you know, so that stuff is, I see other actors and Guy's thing, and I'd love to work with him again, simply because, without sounding like a conceited idiot, I do know how his dialogue works, and that's how it clicked initially. And I see other actors over egging it, and you know, and I'd like to work for him again just for that, really.
I hope you do. I hope you do. So look, let's go on to your second choice of film. You like a favorite film of yours for whatever reason. What might that be?
Well, as I said, it's on any given day, it could be a different film, because I'm, you know, a real cinephile. I've got an enormous collection of DVDs. I've been watching films my entire life, and it never stops, you know. So, and there's always a film every year that comes along that I'm like, that's amazing. Whether it's, you know, Jojo Rabbit or whatever, like something will come along that just really ignites me and excites me again. But I think I picked Taxi Driver as one of them, because I think Taxi Driver is probably the best directed film ever, because it does two or three things that no one had done before and very few people have been able to emulate. It is that it puts you actually inside the mindset of the protagonist. I mean, when you look at the way it's written as a psycho that buys guns and shoots people, you know, that takes a date to a porno cinema, that pours scotch on his cornflakes, you know, that is a PTS Vietnam vet who really, post-traumatic stress disorder Nam vet who can't ever click in with the real world and creates his own version of reality to make it work. And that is a definition of a psychopath. But because it's directed in such a way where it is about, you know, he's right. There's a real rain will come and wash all the scum away off of the streets. Everything about it is geared towards understanding it from his perspective. The Alka-Seltzer dropping into the glass of water and that sort of cleansing sort of fizz that comes out of that while he's looking around this late night diner of all these sort of pimps and whores. The concept of needing a mission. I need a mission. I not quite know what it, but that he needs a mission. And then he creates one, and it goes wrong, and then he creates another one. But you're empathizing with his character. and no film had done that before. It's partially to do with the fantastic performance that De Niro does because it doesn't waver. His character has his sense and he believes in it, and it's unequivocal. And but the way that it's directed so that everything is geared towards him and his romance, and it's not about a lonely psychopath, but it is about a lonely psychopath. You
Yeah.
know, that's
Yeah.
the whole point. You know, so and little things he does in it, like Martin Scorsese's cameo when he's in the back of the car talking about shooting a woman in a pussy with a 45 Magnum. You know, oh, he's a psychopath because you know this guy. There's some real nutters out there. Just that in there makes you think that this guy's got a handle on
Yeah.
reality. And then he doesn't. You know, my important work for the government means I cannot tell you where I live when he's writing to his parents. You
Yeah.
know, it's all of this stuff. He's absolutely mad as a bag of snakes, but somehow you completely identify with him because it's brilliantly directed. And
Yeah.
it's not written like that. It's written as a story of a lone psychopath that tries to kill a presidential candidate and then shoots up a kiddie brothel. But it doesn't come across like that. And then the very last shot with him looking in the mirror and it burns out, which apparently was a camera glitch. And when Thelma went through the footage, they found this camera glitch, this burnout, and they use that at the end with the backwards playing sound effect. So you go, oh yeah, hang on a minute, he's mad. I've just spent an hour and a half, 2 hours, like completely supporting, like wanting this guy to succeed, and I've just realised he's insane. And they're just opposed using that strange romantic soundtrack when it isn't right, but somehow it is because that's how he sees himself as this sort of wonderful jazz, sort of slightly off-key jazz soundtrack driving through steam streets. When in actual fact, he's insane. Brilliantly done. And the other thing that Scorsese does in that movie, which no one else has done, is that he makes objects into characters. And Guy nicked it brilliantly because Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels stars a big bag of money
Yes.
and two shotguns. Right,
Two
they're the lead.
shotguns. Yeah.
That's actually, they've got their own theme song, they've got their own tune when they walk in, when they're shown, go diddling, and then there's these two guns, this bag of cash. They're the MacGuffin. They're not the MacGuffins, they're actual characters. They move around and
Yeah.
they almost have dialogue with people. And Scorsese does that brilliantly. The cab is a character. That character, that chariot might as well be talking. Then he does the thing where he's buying the guns, and each gun gets a close up. This gun will put a bullet through an engine block. This gun is good at close quarters. This gun is perfect if you're going to do this, and this. But and each of there's a close up of those guns that they're going to feature in the story. I mean, they feature miserably in the story. He blows the guy's hand off, which is completely inappropriate. He shoots Harvey Keitel in the belly and he doesn't kill him. All of these things, but those guns are like characters. Now he has very supporting characters.
Yeah.
That's something that an expert director would do, and that you get there's so much detail in what he's trying to do in that film, and a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it comes across. And that's a low budget movie. De Niro was shooting another film and doing this as a favor. He was doing 1900, I think, in Italian on a big budget movie at the same time. So every time the haircuts are all wigs because he's continuity with the other movie. So he's coming in and out to shoot this film. It was produced by a kid whose father died and left him some money, and he's invested it in this, in this low budget sort of shoot 'em up film. Everybody in it is, they're all brilliant, but there's no big names. De Niro's won an Oscar for supporting actor, and he's doing a big studio movie, and this is this thing he's doing as a favor. Everything becomes bigger than the sum of its parts. It's a tiny little film, and really the star of the film is Scorsese. It's a director's showcase, and so I'll always go back to that as an example of what a director can do. The script's good, the performances are good, but the film has its own identity. I think it's brilliant.
So now we're on American films. After you did Lock, Stock, and everything that went on with that afterwards, I think you went to Hollywood for a while, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh God, that was I suppose a disaster.
Why do you say?
I
I'm always
suppose it
interested
was
in
a
this because I
disaster.
find so many actors kind of do a stint in Hollywood because that's,
Yeah, I mean, the thing
and
is,
then they
I
come
mean,
away from it and they hate it.
yeah, I mean, some don't and some do. For me, it was there's a lot of conceit involved in it as well because I, they have their own industry and they have their own heroes and rather like Oasis, you can't go out to America and be cock of the walk and strut your stuff. They don't buy it. They don't have that. They want you to be like you too. You need to go out there and go, God bless America. Only in America, this place is amazing. Or that's what you have to do. You don't go out there and you can't be rock and roll in America because they invented it. In fact, they killed it. They don't like rock and roll. They had rock and roll. They ditched it in favor of Sinatra and Bobby Darin and all that stuff. And then we dug it up and brought it back to them. But you can't be rock and roll over there. So I was over there a little bit conceited and a little bit like I didn't want to be patronized and ended up behaving like a little bit of a knob, and it didn't work. I met all of these great directors. I had great conversations with them, but didn't get any roles, and I didn't come back with anything decent. And when I did get offered stuff, I turned it down. I didn't want to be the support or second support in a Jackie Chan film or the other part in this film with this rapper or blah 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 blah. I turned them all down and no disrespect, mostly Statham did them, and he did the right thing. He acted with a bit of humility and wanted to learn on the job, and so he did all those things. I mean, I remember them pitching Italian Job to me, and I was like insulted. How dare you remake that movie? How dare you even talk to me? You know, I didn't. I had some hilarious conversations with Brian De Palma and I mean all these great directors. I got one or two jobs out there mostly because Lock Stock was cool. But the thing that happened with Lock Stock is that irrespective of what you would have read in this country in the tabloids, it really didn't perform in America. It was this quirky little student film at some art house cinemas around the country, and it was cool. I did Jay Leno. I did like all the big sort of radio shows and chat shows. I did a load of interviews and publications and things out there, but it was a novelty. It's just a little novelty thing, like there isn't put it in perspective, we got about 250 print release in the States, which was the same as Train Spotting. A decent movie, like the one or two that I did do, they get 3 to 3,500.
Yeah.
So we're operating at around about 8, 9% of what a normal studio movie gets released. So our exposure was so small, and it made some money, not massively, but it did all right, but not enough for anyone to go, bring me that guy. I need that guy in my film. And I over here, I couldn't walk down the street, and in America, I'd just be treated like a, and I was angry about that. I'm like, no, no, no. I've had 10 years of being treated like some sort of also ran. I've had 10 years of being told that I should be doing something else. I'm not going to be. I'm not going back to that. And it was the wrong attitude. And or maybe it wasn't. But I didn't fancy it. I spent a long time backwards and forwards. I did a couple of interesting things out there. I met some really, really great people, and ultimately. I did some films that were good and some stuff that was rubbish, but it was very funny towards the end when I had a place out there. I was living there. I remember auditioning to like cover myself in latex and be an alien in some terrible TV movie of some awful sci-fi thing, and then I had a phone call from Simon Jordan saying, "Don't do that. Come home. Let's make the movie a Telstar. I'll give you the money." So I can come back here, direct a movie with Oscar winners in it, or stay there and cover myself in latex and be, some sort of silly novelty. What they call the Brits over there was white Mexicans. It's this
Oh,
idea that, you're cheap and skilled and you've got your own little,
yeah,
culture
yeah.
and what have you. But yeah, they're the white Mexicans, which is, terrible on every level. And then again, later on, after I'd finished Tulsa, I went back out to America and I was, you know, doing bits and pieces and meeting these people and all the rest of it. And then, a phone call saying, come home and do Harry Potter. Oh, all right. you know, I'll come home and do the biggest film in the world, or go stay there and be treated like a, you know, like one up from a waiter. You know, it was really difficult. And America is, they don't believe anything you tell them. This is the thing I found. This is ultimately my problem with Americans, and it's not anyone's fault. And I'm not being personal about it. Americans will believe another American. But if someone who isn't American tells them something, you know, is that right, Chuck? Yeah, that's right. That's, oh, okay. You know, so I'm out there saying I've done this movie. It's huge, and you know, we were, you know, it's the biggest film ever in the UK. Yeah, right, whatever. Or I've just directed a film with Oscar winners in it that's getting raves in the, yeah, yeah, whatever. I've written a play and it's won an Olivier Award. Yeah, yeah, whatever. Because unless someone else tells them that, nobody believes it. Because everyone out there is telling lies, and you're the one guy who's actually telling the truth, and you're being treated with disdain. You know, and
Yeah.
you know, until someone else says, "This is Nick. He wrote a play that got an Olivier nomination, and he's made it into a movie with an Oscar winner in it." That's a conversation opener. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'd say that and no one would believe it. If someone else says it, oh, sit down. You
Yeah.
know, it's really difficult, and the frustration of that, being a foreigner and a cultural foreigner in that landscape wasn't for me. Some people totally assimilate and really get in there. They live there. I remember when I met Christian Bale. I met him a couple of times, and he had this American accent, and I'm like, dude, you're from Bournemouth. Why are you talking like that? It's like, yeah, no, shut up. I do the accent all the time because people don't think you can do an American accent. So I do this all the time. I'm like, oh, shut up. Don't be ridiculous. Anyway, he's Batman and I'm not. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? He was doing it exactly right. You know, assimilate and get in there, and then you can do what you want. I went out there like Liam Gallagher, you know, a conceited Brit that thought I knew everything, and they weren't buying it for a second. You know.
Well, you mentioned about Jason Statham, and obviously Jason has got he's got this career in action films. I'm just wondering because you're a black belt in karate, so it would
Yeah, yeah,
seem
yeah.
to be a natural and an easy thing for you to do as an action film. But does that genre just not hold anything for
No,
you?
no, it wasn't that. I mean, I think really, you know, when I was at my most castable, you know, I was sort of you know, a sort of, you know, like Michelangelo's David. I was sort of young, you know, young, slightly androgynous and young and pretty, and I look at the films that I did and the films that I was in. I was like, yeah, great. But in my mind, you know, I wanted to be this sort of burly, serious, manly Steve McQueen type, but I wasn't. You know, I was more. I was a bit more of a sort of boy band pin-up type, and 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 those guys don't do martial arts films, and if they do, they're a bit silly. Statham, bless him, and yeah, and I've got so much time and respect and for Jason, and I think it's incredible what he's achieved. And he, you know, he was my flatmate. He's lived with me when we were doing Lock, Stock, and you know, and we I sort of spent without being, you know, brash, sort of Svengali'd him a little bit because he'd never been on a film set before. But he's an athlete. He's a world class. You know, he was a
Mm.
British captain of the dive team. You know, so and not a martial artist, but because he's so physically able, he picks it up in seconds. It was like, all right, I've been years trying to do that, but you'll do it. He do it overnight. So he, you know, he's perfect. He's the perfect fit for that. I think now I'm a bit older and grizzlier. I could probably get away with it. But back then, you know, I was young and pretty, and and you know, the jobs I was getting or missing out on weren't the sort of things where you do, you know, mega kung fu. You know, you wouldn't do that. And as I said, now, you know, maybe a bit more. But that genre is terrific. But I think there'll always be room for that. But my favourite films. I mean, obviously, I like Enter the Dragon. Everyone does, you know. Those are seminal. But it's and The Matrix was a mind blowing movie, you know. And I was so lucky to be friends with the Wachowskis at the time, and I'd done a movie with Carrie Ann Moss and Joey Pants, and they'd introduced him to Larry Fishburne and all of that gang, you know. And I was at the premiere of the movie, and that redefined it. That was fantastic. But my actual favourite films are, you know, Spy Who Came In From the Cold, or
Yeah.
you know, those sort of seminal black and white 60s masterpieces that nobody does any kung fu in them. You know what I mean? My favorite actors, Richard Burton, Peter O'Toole, and like Albert Finney, Tom Courtenay, they didn't leap around doing kung fu. You know, even Steve McQueen, it's just believable, realistic action. You know, it's I sort of maybe not for me. Is the short answer.
Well, let's talk about your directing because it's possibly not quite as well known that you have got several 4 films behind you as a director, and it
Yeah.
was Telstar which kind of really it's a great film, Telstar, Joe Meek's
It
story.
is.
Um,
I mean, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I mean, it's some of its parts and everything. But it's the thing about Telstar is that every time anyone watches it or comes to it new, they go, "Why haven't I seen this film before? Why didn't it win an Oscar? Why isn't it? Why don't I know this movie?" But because it's the best work from those actors. You know, they're all
yeah.
phenomenal, and it was a film that took me so long to make. I mean, you know, a decade. There's so much detail and there's so much love in it, and everybody's at their absolute best. You know, the design is faultless. The camera work, the way that we squeezed every single possibility out of that tiny budget, and having this maverick producer who was just a multi-millionaire who owned a football club and liked the idea of making a film.
Well,
You know,
that's what I was going to ask you about with Simon Jordan, because
yeah, bless him.
at no point does anyone think does the owner of Crystal Palace is going to start producing films, and
Well, this
actually,
is the thing. Like when we were doing the movie, everyone would get their wage slip. But one of the things that when you set a movie up, it's a, you know, it's a vehicle, it's a financial vehicle. So you hire a. This is all the boring stuff. You hire a payroll company, and they do your payroll. I'm sat with Simon in his, you know, in his villa in Marbella, going through the budget, and he'd go, "No, I've got one of them. Yeah, got one of them. Yeah, got one of them." So we used every facility from Crystal Palace that we possibly could to make the film. And one of the things was he's got a payroll, that company that pay all the wages for Crystal Palace, and they're sat around doing nothing out of season. So we
yeah.
started filming as soon as the season started, and we had to finish before last week in August, so that we could use as much of the facilities as possible. Everyone on that film got a Crystal Palace wage slip with the Eagles and CPMC. Hey, there's simple little things like that reminded you that you were a Crystal Palace employee for the 6 weeks of filming. You know, it's brilliant. And the stuff that we used their team coach. You know, we did all sorts of things that we used from that football club to sort of the what's the word? The sort of synergy of you wouldn't think would exist between a film being made in a football and owning a football club.
So it's a great cast. Con O'Neill is great in the lead, but obviously, the one thing that does stick out for all the right reasons is you're casting a Kevin Spacey, because it's a low budget film. I know he was living over here at the time the film was made with the old Vic, I think it was. So how
Yeah.
did you get Kevin Spacey involved in
Well,
such a
Kevin's
film?
an old mate of mine, and you know, for better or worse, and I sort of stood by him through thick and thin, really. But he's been a pal of mine for a very, very long time, and we've had some great nights out and what have you. And there was a thing that happened with Simon phoned me up from Spain. We were deep into pre-production. We're trying to cast these people, and I was having a nightmare casting it. Because nobody thought I could do it. Everyone thought the film was good. I had my casting director scream at me. I said, "Well, why haven't I got James McAvoy or Andrew Garfield, all these young actors that I'd seen doing plays and that I wanted to get the script to?" And she screamed at me saying, "Because everyone thinks it's going to be shit and no one thinks you can do it," and stormed out. Oh, okay, right, okay, like that is it. And in the end, we got that cast because pretty much everyone in the film had seen the play, because their agent wasn't going to give the script out. And that idiot from Lockstock's written a film, directing a movie, unless they'd seen the play, which was standing ovations and was a big, was a big thing. Unless you'd seen the play, you didn't really understand that the movie was going to be could be something special. So we weren't getting the cast that I put down. We weren't getting the actors that I promised. And Simon phoned me up from Spain and said, "Right, really simple. I've been talking to a mate of mine that does all this film." And I said, "No," he says, "if I don't get a bankable name in it, I'm going to lose all my money. So you know, you get me a bankable name, or I'm gonna pull it. I'll pay everyone. It's gonna cost me 100 grand so far, whatever. Me and you are still gonna be mates, but I'm not paying a penny unless you can get a name. So I went literally like screaming down to Kevin's, banged on the door and begged him, like literally begged him. I've got a holiday booked. I went, yeah, but you know, this is probably 10 days and you can do this. Oh, I don't know. And then I said, look, what do you want? What's your rate? And I quoted a ridiculous amount of money. And Kevin was like, okay. Then Hamish, his assistant, another friend of mine, said, well, let's start this conversation. Then I put Kevin in touch with Simon. I phoned Simon up, said, right, I've got you a double Oscar winning A-lister who's going to be not just a cameo, a proper role in the film. So I've got Kevin Spacey. He said he's going to do it. Oh, we still on? So I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you've got him, yeah, okay, right, well, now, blah, 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 blah. So suddenly we've got Kevin attached. Then he phoned me back. I'm going to swear and you can bleep it out. He phoned me back up. He said, oh, I've just spoken to Kevin, yeah. Does he want the keys to my fucking house as well? How much? Well, you know, you said get a star, blah, 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 blah. So they haggled a little bit and they came to some sort of clever financial arrangement. But we had to pay Kevin, I say proper money, the money that's being paid now, and it's nothing like what's being paid now for the platforms are paying for stars. But he got a reasonable chunk of money, something near his normal rate, and everyone else got peanuts. But that's the way it was. So, you know, and I didn't get paid for directing the film. Simon was like, no, no, you don't get paid. We'll sort you out. Basically, Simon, I was living off casino winnings. Every Friday we'd go to a casino. Simon would give me £1,000, and then I'd like try and double that, and then live off it. You know, give him his money back, and that was it. I'm living off casino winnings for the duration of shooting the film, because on principle, because Kevin was so. Oh, that was it. I said to Simon, look, if it's a deal breaker, the thing with Kevin, it came down to like the last 10 or 15 grand or something. I said, tell Kevin, I'll take it. He can come out of my wages. Because I thought Kevin will go, no, of course, leave Nick's wages alone. And Kevin went, okay then. So I did get this double Oscar winning star, and I've got these two massive egos with the guy that owns Crystal Palace and the guy with all the Oscars, sort of bickering, and I'm trying to placate it, and I put try to sort of throw some of my money into it just to ease it up, and then it just disappeared. But I got what I wanted, which was, you know, I got a big star in the role. People do say, oh, that's obviously stunt casting, blah, 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 but you need it. You do need to have a name. You need something for people to go, really? Otherwise, it's another British movie, which you need extraordinary. You need to be very, very lucky. You don't need quite as much luck to get out over the parapet if you have a big name in it, and especially overseas sales and Americans, and you know that whatever territories want to buy the film, it's got Kevin in it. Then they'll look at it and they'll buy it. So it made it much more palatable. And I also think Kevin did a good job. I mean, it was fun. And he'd never ever done a British movie before, and I mean, you know, it was a bigger deal than people really understood. He'd been living in the country for the best part of 10 years, going back to America and doing Superman, or you know, ridiculously massive movies, and then running the old Vic. In all that time, no one had gotten to do anything, and you know, and I managed to bag him.
The rest of the cast is really interesting. You've got because you've got Justin Hawkins, Jimmy Carr, Marcus Brigstock. That seems a bizarre bit of casting. How did that come about?
Oh, the thing was, the thing that when you are actually up and running with a movie, then it's quite easy to get people involved. And you go to people like Justin and Jimmy Carr. It's only going to be an afternoon. It's a few quid. It's a cameo, and they want a credit. So you can get those interesting people that just want a credit. They just want to be involved. And so the idea that absolutely everyone in there has got something, you know, I just wanted to have someone. There's something about absolutely everybody in the cast of the film. And even the other roles are like the real characters 40 years on. The guy in the taxi is the real Clem Cattini. The stage door Johnny is the real Patrick Pink. The head of Decca Records is the real Johnny Layton. You know, they're the real guys doing tiny little cameos. So every one-liner is someone. Yeah, and that was quite easy to do because you're up and running, and then it's just fun. People just do it for, equity minimum and a pint afterwards, So that was.
Telstar's a great film. Does need to be seen by far more people because it's so good. You 2 years later, then you went on to do The Kid, and then 11 years later, you went on to do Creation Stories. Now, again, another great film about this that time about Alan McGee. The Kid is a true story as well. Um, the theme that seems to run through all of these is that they are all true stories, and they all seem to be more specifically underdog stories. Is
Mm.
that a, sort of a theme that kind of speaks to you? Because you've been quite open about your own upbringing, sort of, raised on a council estate to where you are today. Is that something that resonated with you?
And not on purpose, I mean, really, what happened with The Kid was I was in that thing where we were doing screenings with Telstar, because Simon had made the movie. I've got an individual millionaire that's bankrolled the film and hasn't taken any money off anyone else. No pre-sales, nothing to do with any other studio, no other organization. And in hindsight, that was a mistake. And I've spoken very candidly with Simon about this. If you don't play the game, then people just ignore what you're doing, and it's not in their interests to help you. So we became we were on another table, when as far as the British film industry was concerned, and we that nobody helped us. If we'd have got involved with someone else and someone else's money, pre-sold it, made it a co-pro with Channel 4 or the BBC or something, even if it was just as a gesture, we would have been part of the establishment. But Simon's a very strong individualist, and he got to where he was by bucking the system and ignoring how it should be done, and that carried on with this film. We made a film without anyone's input that was a terrific movie. We didn't have their help at the end of it, and you do need some skin in the game. So that film didn't get the exposure that it could have done. But what did happen is when we were doing a lot of screenings to try and get a sales agent or distribution or all this stuff that's normally done beforehand, the producers of The Kid, and specifically Kevin Lewis, who'd written the book and it was his biography, saw one of these screenings and were really blown away by it and said, right, yeah, get him, you can do it. And it wasn't my first choice, and I very much adapted. I worked very closely with Kevin and got a writer's credit, which I'm very pleased with. It was very kind of him because it is his book and his story and his first draft. But we managed to make an interesting film out of what is a very, very somber, very, it's poverty porn. It's a difficult film. But again, we made a movie that's ultimately uplifting and works, and I did some really clever things with the soundtrack. I made it really interesting. I did some really clever shots. I got some interesting actors in it to do unusual things, like Natasha McElhone doing some stuff that you just wouldn't recognize her in. And it really chimed, especially I got a lot of like amazing, like heartfelt response from people that had grown up in care and saying this is the first film they'd seen that was about them. And I went to my old estate because those tin houses estate is exactly the same. New Addington, where the book is set, is in Croydon, is outside of Croydon, and South Oxley is outside of between Wembley and Watford. But they're exactly the same. Tin houses, self-contained. Nobody wants those people in the posh bits. They just want them, they can stay on that little estate in Fester. And so I went to South Oxley because it's a bit closer to the studios, to Elstree or any of those other places that we could use, and we're using the facilities at. And filmed there, and that was really interesting because it must have been subconscious of me coming back, like like Lawrence of Arabia, like strolling in on a camel with this, with my film crew and all these movie stars. And I was doing that. I just didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't until a few people pointed out. I just thought I would go there. And it's true. I went there, spoke to the local gangsters and local villains, and curried a little bit of favour to stop us getting stuff nicked. I thought if I go there, I'm less likely to get turned over. But it wasn't weird going back to my old estate and my old school and recreating all of that stuff. That was really interesting. And then ironically, I will say this about the movie, because it doesn't get the credit it deserves, but I remember watching Moonlight and someone saying to me, "You've made this film, haven't you? You've already made this film. This is like the American version of your white trash council house story. It's exactly the same, but they've done black American black Compton, but this is the same thing." Right? Yeah, I suppose we did. And then there was a run of those sort of films, even Nomad. I'm like, yeah, that's the same. We were doing that when it wasn't quite fashionable, doing what I call poverty porn, but we did it 10 years before anyone. Then after that, I had some fantastic scripts that I'd written and developed and that I was working on, and I'd written some other stuff that had been made, but I was trying to get other films off the ground. And again, I went back to America because I'd made a couple of movies, and the kid had won a load of prizes. We'd won prizes at 3 or 4 festivals, American festival, one Savannah, one New York International Festival. We won these gongs, so I thought I'd go back to America and I'll direct a film in the States. But nothing that I got given, I was just unlucky. It didn't happen. Didn't take root. It didn't. There's a whole load of movies. There's a saying: you don't ruin a prospect by drilling it, and that's what happens with scripts in America. If you actually you've got this script going around, and everyone's, we're paying 20, 30 grand for that, for the rights, for that rights, but then renew the rights and move it around. Once you've made the movie, that's the end of it, right? You've not got that piece of collateral to move about. And I just got involved in a lot of films that were moving around and didn't actually get made, and that was not even treading water, it was like holding your breath. It was dreadful. I had that for a few years. And then the films that I very, very nearly got off the ground, were ones that I'd written, were nothing like that. The action movies, that's what I want to do, that's what I wanted to get, comedy and action outright, not just biographies, but I'd done 2 biographies. And so there was this sort of malaise, a sort of middle ground. I got a couple of things. I did Space Age, which was a thing for Sky that I'd written and produced, but I couldn't direct because I was doing a show in the West End at the time. And that was supposed to be a pilot for a TV series that I'd written. There was another TV series I'd written which was about to go off, and then at the last minute ITV changed their mind and went with something else. So I generated this great big catalogue of work and then didn't get to do it. Creation Stories came about because Shelley, the producer, and was looking to make Irvine Welsh's his autobiography into a film. Irvine Welsh had written the first draft of the script of Alan McGee's life. Alan McGee is the guy that started Creation Records, that invented the 90s. Really, they started off with the indie scene, then the rave scene, then they Primal Scream and all these other amazing bands. Then they signed Oasis, and then that was it, Britpop. And then they got political and got involved in, got behind Tony Blair. It's an amazing epoch, and I wanted to get all that craziness because I was there. I was at those parties with those people. I was right in the thick of it at the time. So that was just presented to me because Irvine had said, "This is the guy that you should see. If you haven't seen Telstar, this is the guy that needs to make my script." So Irvine Welsh put me in the driver's seat, and then I reached out to Danny Boyle and said, "Look, would you be the exec producer, because it will help the money land?" And he did, and he was brilliant, and he was so helpful, and he got reviewing all my rushes and going over my assemblies, and he really meticulous, a bit like Scorsese. The detail you get from Danny, you can see it all in all his stuff. So we're sort of geeking out between us about what stuff to keep and lose and where it all was. That was brilliant. And so we made this wonderful film with Irvine Welsh and Danny Boyle and me at the sort of, in the driver's seat with those guys behind me. It was fantastic. But again, I didn't, answering your question, I didn't plan on it being yet another true life story biography. It was just, they go back to Telstar as a reference, and that's the things that you keep bouncing off of. The movie I'm trying to do at the moment is, I'm very close to getting off the ground at the moment, is a comedy that I've written that's loosely based on some real people, but it's fictional, and then there's some other action stuff that I want to get off the ground while I've still got some hair and teeth, you know. So Telstar was great, but it's in acting, they say be prepared. You will always be cast as whatever your last job was. So if you were the, you know, whatever, the street urchin in that movie, your next cut job will be playing a street urchin. If you've directed a really cool period biopic, the next thing someone's going to come to you with is a musical period related biopic. I've done one in the 60s and one in the 90s, you know. So that's what it is. You're tethered to your last success or the last thing people know you from. The amount of gangster roles I got offered after Lock, Stock, you can imagine, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it's the same thing. Ironically, it's the same thing as a director that you'd have as an actor. So that's why. And then the hiatus in the middle was me trying to get other stuff off the ground and just really nearly doing it, but not quite.
So with you know, these films that you've made, let's go to your third and final film that has meant something to you. What film would that be?
Well, I put Lawrence of Arabia because it's always in my, any given day of the week, that will be in my top three. You know, I saw the film on TV, you know, when I was a kid, and was just mesmerized for three and a half hours. And then I saw the film. I saw the reissue, the 70mm reissue in the early 90s, at the cinema, where they dug out all these, put the extended version. They found some old footage, and they put the scenes back in, a couple of scenes back in. Dug out the old actors to revoice them, and got some really good mimics in to do other people, actors that have passed. And it's a relentless example of, some people say style over substance, but this is the best. David Lean is the best example of style is substance. You know, this is, if you get the right style, this is the substance. Everything he's done from Dr. Zhivago, you know, anything, all of his films, style is substance. This is part of it. This will inform not only what you're watching, what the story is, but the style somehow informs the characters, informs what the characters are doing. And Lawrence of Arabia is this relentless spectacle that never ceases. You know, there's at no point does it not be an incredible spectacle. Everything about it is perfect. The performances are phenomenal. The story is literally the stuff of legends. You know, it is the birth of a king and the birth of a kingdom, and it is epic without any cheese. You know, there's a little bit of cheese in epic, you know, much as I love El Cid or anything else with Charlton Heston in, you know, there is an element of cheese about that. There is no cheese in this. This is heartfelt, genuine. It's about, and it's also how a film can be that big and yet somehow understated. You know, there's a lot of unsaid stuff. There's a lot of subtext. You don't necessarily need to know the background of the characters. They are how they are, and you sort of know why they're like that. And no one has to explain what happened to them in their youth. You know, it has this understatement wrapped, like in the middle, wrapped around with this incredible spectacle. And it's relentlessly beautiful in a story that's epic on every level. And the script, Robert Bolt's script, is extraordinary. You know, how he can say so much and with so little. You know, and it's all there, and it's about the ultimate achievement of man or humankind, and how it can just be undone. You know, when people stop listening, when in comes the bureaucrats, and then it's all. Don't you see what should be happening? This would be, and also I think people should watch the film again. When you see beyond the spectacle, the political aspect of it is there was a man that united the Arab tribes, and that would have been a continent of, and we wouldn't be in the position that we were in. And then the bureaucrats come along with a pencil and mark out a demarcation. We're going to call this country Iraq, and you can be the king. Oh, all right then. You know, rather than, well, we'll give you the facilities, you sort it out yourself. You be this united Arab state, which nobody wanted because they would have had all the oil, all the money, and all the power.
Yeah.
You know, but everything about that film is works on a heightened level over and above any film that went before or since. Simple as, there
You,
is,
you can see why purportedly it's the film that screens for himself before he begins shooting on his next film.
yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. I do, ironically, I do that, I do that quite a lot with my movies. I watch a load of films that get me into the frame of that, of what film we're going to make. And that would be one of them, and Taxi Driver, because again, that's a film about minutiae, and Lawrence of Arabia is a film about grandiose.
yeah. So, something that move on to the next. I mean, and it is a big film. Is obviously the Harry Potter films. You
Yeah,
had the
yeah,
role of Scabior in the final two.
yeah,
I think
great.
I've pronounced that right.
Uh,
The
Whatever you
final
want.
two sort of Deathly Hallows films. Massive films. I think they took up about every soundstage, sort of up, up in Watford. Um, how overwhelming is that to work on a production of that size?
You know what? It isn't. Wasn't overwhelming. It's a very interesting question. So, two things. Anecdotal. I know I've been prattling on, but this is quite funny. I was on the set of The Kid, and what had happened? Okay, what happened? I've been to see them, and I'd done something very, very different from what was in the script in the audition, and I'd done something quite clever, and they'd ummed and ahed and ahed and and eventually, you have to go through a whole plethora of people on another continent. Eventually, they said, "Yes, we'll give you. I got the role," which is like great. I'm going to be in Harry Potter. That's marvelous. Uh, I was directing The Kid, and the dates kept slipping, and Rupert wasn't available, and blah blah, so and so, and the money hadn't quite dropped, and this was right, and that was right. We're going to go. We're going to wait till after Christmas, and we're going to pick up prep, and you could see the Harry Potter dates and the directing The Kid dates just slowly colliding like this. They were just going to. I was like, oh crap, right. They literally landed bang on top of each other. So I'm like thinking, so my agent phoned up, said, well, you can't do Harry Potter. You're doing The Kid, you've started prep, you can't walk out on a movie that you're directing. There's no way I'm not going to do Harry Potter. That's not a consideration. I'm definitely going to do this. Well, I don't see how this is going to work. All the scenes that I'm doing on Harry Potter are night shoots. So if I just direct all day, and then I can do the night shoots, and then I'll go back to directing, and we just keep it quiet. And my agent's like, this is insane. This is obviously, madness. I don't know, it's going to work. It's fine. So I got to schedule, got closer and closer, and I was doing Potter and going off and doing costume fittings and arguing about what I was going to wear and all this, that, and the other, which is another story altogether. The character became completely different from how it was visual on the mute boards and all the rest of it. They wanted me to look like Swampy. I'm not wearing that. And it was the costume designer Jenny I'd worked with on a couple of films, and she's brilliant. She did all the Bond movies, So she said, "No, darling, you are too beautiful. You cannot wear this. This is ridiculous." But so we came up with this super cool adamant, sort of modern day child catcher look for the character, which we were sort of having that fight while going backwards and forwards to the studio directing. Then we get the first day's filming, and I've worked out all I need to do is do 3 days without sleep. So,
Easy,
I've
easy.
spoken to doctor friends and experts. How do you do this? And can you take some tablets? Like, no, you can't. There's no way of staying up for 3 days. The only advice I've got, the best advice, was someone who was ex-special forces, and he said, now what we do is you get a knife, make sure that a very sharp knife, but and you stab yourself in the center of the thigh, perfectly safe. And you'll stab yourself like that, and you'll get a rush of endorphins, and you'll be good for at least 4 or 5 hours. So you have to time yourself. You do this stab, and then I'm going to stab myself in the leg. Yeah, okay, that's what we need to do. That's what we do. And then a proper doctor who's doing night emergency shift work said, look, this is the thing. You drink a coffee, you sleep for it takes 20 minutes to get in your system. You'll sleep for 20 minutes. You'll wake up. You'll be alert. You can do that throughout the day. You can. That's how we do emergency cover. I had all this stuff lined up. And then I get to the first day with filming, and I'm screaming at the crew because I knew that I'm about to go off and do a 12-hour shoot on the Potter films, and I'm a bit edgy about it. And they were really dragging their feet. It was all this sort of you know, my lunch starts with my dinner, it's the plate, that sort of arguments that you get sometimes with British crew. Anyway, so I'd had enough of it. So I had a little bit of a row, got in the car, drove off, got to location. We were in Burnham Beaches, so we're outside in location. And when Potter goes outside, it's like an army. I mean, it's incredible. The amount of people, manpower, equipment, you know, trucks. It's like an invasion. It's astounding. So we get there. There's about 200-300 vehicles. There's tents and caravans, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, right. This is a bit intimidating. You know, I've just come from my set, which none of me got none of this. So we get there. We get to the actual location, and you know, and I've got the costume and makeup and all the rest of it, and blah blah blah. Then we get another Jeep, and we drive about a mile into the forest, and there's all this other stuff. They've got these lights put up about half a mile away, like in the literally balloons and things, so they can illuminate this whole forest. And then we get to another place, and there's all these sort of tents and setups and monitors and stuff, you know, and it's like telemics, you know, all this stuff going on. And then said, well, we're going to walk you up to the location. And I walked up and went up right in the middle of the forest, about 100 yards from anyone. There was me, Emma Watson, and a Steadicam op. And then Peter, the director, just comes up and says, David, the director, David Yates, comes up and says, right, what we're going to do is because you're invisible, so what happens is that when the camera goes around your back, Emma, you just duck down, and then we'll come round, and then you won't be there, but you'll keep looking like you know. So I'm like, this is the biggest film in the world, and they're just doing a simple shot where when the camera comes around the back of my head, Emma goes like this. She's out of shot, and then she comes up again. That's how they did the disappearing. You know, she's what's that smell? That sort of she's invisible. And I thought, at the end of the day, this is like what I'm doing on my crap. You know, this is one person with a camera and another person. This is a DOS. This is like, you know, they might be spending like a couple of million a day, but this is that's all it is. It's just me in the woods with an actress and a Steadicam. And I thought, this is exactly the same. It's just better catering, you know. And then when we did the scene, and Yates, he was jumping up and down. He was really, oh, that's so exciting. It's going to be great. Oh. Got back, and the producer, one of the other Davids, came up and said, he said, I know what you're doing. What is it? David Barron. He said, I know what you're doing. He said, you've got your own little film going on, haven't you? Maybe, don't know what you're talking about. He said, you see all these guys, you know what they got in common? At the end of the year, they're all going to be unemployed. And they're all going to be doing single camera, little British dramas like you're doing. And he put his arm around me, literally put his arm around me. He said, I've got a body standing, like a body double. Your mother would be able to tell you apart. He said, no one else needs to know what you're doing. They don't need to know what's going on in LA. I've got your back. Don't worry about it. And then he sent me home. So I finished about 2-3 in the morning, which is fine. I got back, had enough sleep to carry on. Boom, boom, boom. The next night, I ended up doing 3 nights of that. The next night, we were filming on location in Croydon. And they booked a room for me at the Croydon Park Hotel. And I finished quite late, but I still got 5 hours sleep, you know, because I was slap bang on. I didn't have to be on set until, you know, I could push it till 9 o'clock, you know, until I actually need to be in front, you know, to barking the orders. So the first day finished ridiculously early. Second day, they got the body double in, and the third night shoot, they did have to push it a little bit. They got me a hotel that was right next door to where I was filming. So they really took care of me. So they were absolutely lovely. So in answer to your question, because I was, firstly, it was such a small, intimate, a load of fluff around it, but the actual shooting of the stuff was small and intimate. I could understand that. And then the way I was being taken care of by the producers when I had this big secret going on just made me feel completely comfortable. So, you know, I didn't turn up on a big set going, oh my God, who are all these people? I just felt immediately welcome, you know. And then they loved what I did. They cut a lot of my stuff out because it was too scary. What the stuff that we actually did, I was really proud of, and everyone was really rocking about, because we got some stuff in there that was, but in the end, apparently, so David Heyman says, yeah, we screened it to the guys in LA, in Burbank, and they said, "This is a kids' film, not Saw." So I got the sins came out, and a lot of the stuff I did went. But David Yates was like, no, all the kids now, they're all 20, they've grown up with this film. I want it to be grown up. We can be a bit more adult. So okay, go for it. So
That's a
this
very
is
good David Yates impression.
he really they let me do some dark stuff and then cut it out. But it's there in essence, you know.
The whole franchise has got so many, just about every great British actor,
Yeah, yeah.
worked on it. Uh, have you found, like it seems so many of the other actors in the franchise, that the fandom, even now, 14, 15 years later, is still, um, you can't quite comprehend how obsessive they are,
Well, what it
obsessive
is
rather.
is that I realize because I don't do too many, but I'm doing one next week actually. But I do a few of these the Wizard Fests, um, and with nice people, and what you realize is that when you're in those buildings and everyone's dressed up and they've got their silly outfits on and blah 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 blah, it's a safe space, and it's a safe space for people that have a different sensitivity, and your mums and dads are standing there when you're signing autographs. They're like, "Oh my God, they're out of the house. Look, they've left their room."
Yeah.
So you're their reality. So you talk to them and you'll make bridging a gap between what your little fantasy world and the way that your brain operates. It's real. I am a real person. This is the real world. It's cool. You can do that. And these are all these like-minded people. It's this safe space for people that might be that whatever the sort of on fleek terminology is for it now, but you're not neurodiverse, I suppose. But it's that you've got people with that don't go out much and want you to sign in a particular green biro, but it's their connection with the real world. So there's, without sounding like a pompous buffoon, there is an element of social work about it, because you're socializing and interacting with people that don't get out much, and the mums and dads really appreciate it, and it makes me feel good when you're going, you're not just there like some pompous ass signing your name. You're engaging with people that that don't get out as much as they should, and this could help. So I think there's an element of that, the safety within the world of Harry Potter. That's why they're all into it. It's like, this is a great safe place where I can be comfortable. And not only that, everybody around it is understands, and they do. We all understand. There's the great thing about Potter is J.K. Rowling's in a brilliance. One of her stipulations was no American actors.
Mm.
That's what she said to David Hayden. It's going to be filmed in the UK. We have a premiere at Leicester Square, and there's no American actors. And it sounds really strange to make that demand, but she future-proofed it, because if there's no American actors, there's no stars, like proper studio megastars. And there's nobody there with their entourage and their baggage and and what they've got to look like, and what do I look, they don't bring any of that to them. You just have British actors who are brilliant, but we're just sat around, like Mark Williams said, extras with trailers. That's all we are. But there was that idea. It doesn't matter how big you are. You might Maggie Smith. You're not bigger than the sum of its parts. You're not bigger than the franchise. And it's these British actors that do their best and just get on with it, and they don't draw anything away from what's going on. And American stars would do, even if they didn't. Their team would, their publicists would, their guys that. Never, you'd be on the set of that film, biggest film in the world, never heard an American accent till the premiere.
Mm.
Everything's that. Nobody wants to come here. The weather's terrible. The food's awful. It's an 11-hour journey on a plane. Nobody wants to be in the UK. They're fine. We'll look at the rushes. We'll have conversations later on. So the film got made because of JK's the sort of resolutions that she had. It meant that you didn't have any of that nonsense, and it got to be a thing that didn't have egos. So that's another reason that you're so comfortable on it.
Yeah, it's very true that. So Finally, then, going forward, you've worked as an actor, director, writer, producer. Where do you see the future now for yourself going
I,
forward?
I just, it's deck chairs on the Titanic, especially at the moment. It's a changing industry, and I don't like the way it's changing, and I'm hoping it's going to change back. In fact, I know it will. The platforms for me have come in and just redefined stuff in not a good way. They've overspent. They've made people think that they're worth more than they are. The product that they make doesn't have to stand the scrutiny of box office. If it doesn't hit the box office, so people don't go, I don't want to see that. That's crap. That you don't get that from the platforms. They've got it on their base, and it's there, and it's content, and they use content as collateral, and it's not the way theatre, film and theatre. It's a spectator sport, and if you don't go, it's because you're not doing it right. But if you can't get people to watch it, it's because it's because they're not. There's a few exceptions, but essentially, they people will tell you if they think it's working or not, and then you don't have that scrutiny with the platforms. I think it's coming back. I think cinema is is irrepressible. I think people want to get out of the house and sit in a room and enjoy that cathartic experience. They don't just want to sit at home. And I think people are waiting, wanting something to get to hit the screens that they want to go and see, like we did with Lock, Stock, or Danny did with Train Spotting. Those films come and the audience will go, "Oh, thank God for that," and they'll rush to the cinema. And I want to be part of that. And the films that I'm trying to make, that touch wood, I will eventually, hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have some stuff greenlit, will be part of that resurgence. Small, clever, whimsical movies that people love.
Mhm.
And no more middle-aged men with superpowers and capes. That's I've had enough of that. I mean, there's people I know who've gone, really, in a pair of tights. Okay. But so hopefully that's gone, and all the other whiz bang, CGI stuff's got to a level where nobody wants it anymore. They're sort of, yeah, I've seen that. I've seen a giant, it used to be a big deal. A giant lizard attacking New York, that's incredible. Now it's sort of, you see it in commercials. What you can't do with AI or CG is evoking emotion in an audience. You can't make someone cry. You can't get people really involved. You can't, and every now and then something will come along that gets people excited, ebullient, or bursts into tears. And I think that's the power of cinema, and that's the power of storytelling. Storytelling is basically time travel. It takes you from where you are to somewhere else in a completely different state, in a completely different uh, uh, construct. And storytelling won't go anywhere. It's what defines a species. And cinema is the ultimate storytelling. And if it's in the hands of robots and computers, it won't work. It just won't. So moving forward, I want to make some of my films. I prefer directing to acting because it's the best gig in the world. And I want to make some films, and I want to make some human movies that people want to get engaged to. And they don't have to be massive, I'm not interested in that. And let's stick with it. You know what I mean? Let's stick with that. See what happens. I'll speak to you in a year. I'll either be signing on, or I'll have made a movie and I'll have a prize.
Nick, thank you ever so much for your time. It's been
Welcome.
really interesting, hearing what you said and your insight to so much stuff. And it's been an enormous privilege to talk to you. So thank you so
Oh,
much,
fun.
Nick. I wish you all the best for the future. Thank you.
Cheers, Simon. What? You can stop recording.